Hey guys, I thought I'd do like a quick little impromptu video about stuff in my collection. Something I've been meaning to do on my channel for a while is kind of like talk about stuff that I have, stuff that I like, stuff that I enjoy. Things that have like particular like stories or like memorable things associated with them. And just stuff I have a lot to say about, I guess. And I was thinking, I was playing my Virtual Boy the other day. And I kind of decided that, this thing is such like an oddity. It's such a weird little device that I kind of wanted to talk about it. So today we're going to be talking about this thing, the Virtual Boy. It looks like a VR headset, but it's not a handheld console in any regard. It is not a VR headset in any regard. There's an old like AVGN, like Angry Video Game nerd episode where he reviews the Virtual Boy and he like tapes it to his head. I could do that, I guess, but nah, I've got the stand, so it's all good. But yeah, so this is the Virtual Boy. I have had this particular Virtual Boy for going on 5 years now, which is why I kind of wanted to make this video. The circumstances behind getting it aren't like particularly interesting. I got this off eBay in 2018 for about $90. It came with the stand, the controller, the battery pack. So the battery pack, this thing here, which I just took out of a drawer, that runs on US voltage. US mains is, I believe it's 110 volts, and the UK we run on about 230 volts. So I needed to get like a step down converter for that as well, which was a pretty interesting setup. And it also came with a single game, Virtual Boy Wario Land. Now a lot of people, when they buy a console, they have like this kind of rule that they subscribe to, which is like get like 5 games for the console. Don't buy a console unless there are like 5 games that interest you at least, that you want to buy. Otherwise, it's not really a justified purchase. However, I will say that having played quite a bit of Virtual Boy Wario Land, because it's the only Virtual Boy game I have, it's a system seller. I would really say so. For the price that I got this thing, like, bearing in mind that it was pre-COVID, and stuff got really expensive, especially like video game related stuff. There were so many games that I bought like pre-COVID, in like 2018, 2017 when I went to university, that at the time, for example, Dragon Quest V on the DS, I think I got that for like £40 or something like that. And now it goes for like upwards of £100, maybe even more than that. It's crazy. The Virtual Boy is another such item that I was able to get this. Granted, it wasn't in like a fully functional state when I got it, but I was able to get this for less than $100. Way less than £100, obviously, too. So, yeah, I mentioned that this didn't come in a fully functional state. That's because this had a common issue that the Virtual Boys have, which is that the displays, if you have a look there, those displays were no longer working. So I had to take this apart, take out the LED displays. I should probably explain this a bit better, but I had to take out those LED displays, send them off to a guy in Netherlands, who I found on Planet VB, which is like the Virtual Boy forum for all the individuals who are sad enough to actually own one of these. We're a very exclusive club. It's a funny story. The first time I sent them off, I didn't put in his like house number, so they actually sent it back to me, Royal Mail, and I had to send it off again, which was pretty annoying. It ended up in It ended up in the Netherlands, and then it just kind of sat there for a while before they posted it back, and then I realized, ah crap, I forgot to put in the house number. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, he fixed them up. It fixed the Virtual Boy. I was able to turn it on and play the game. Over the past almost 5 years, it's developed some horizontal like rows of dead pixels, which can't really be fixed. The Virtual Boy LED displays are rather interesting. They're basically like arrays of very, very, very small LEDs, and they're kind of like affixed to a ribbon cable. The issue that arises with these is that like the ribbon cable that connects to the LED displays, for some reason they weren't soldered on. They were glued on, and over time the glue that affixes the ribbon cables to the LED displays I believe that comes off a little bit. So there are people around the world who are quite adept at dissolving the glue, soldering on the ribbon cables, and then sending them back to people. There used to be something that was quite popular in the Virtual Boy community of taking out the displays and putting them in an oven and basically cooking them, and that would be like kind of a quick and dirty fix. But it's not recommended to do that. So if you do get a Virtual Boy, probably refrain from doing that. But the Virtual Boy, so I've done quite a few things to this over the years. I've amassed a bit of a collection of like replacement parts. So I have like replacement lenses if these ever get too badly scratched up or anything. I have replacement screws, because if you look at the bottom, so the Virtual Boy, it uses some interesting screws. They're not really they're not Phillips heads by default. Some of them I've replaced with Phillips head screws because it's just easier to get these out, and they're a bit more durable than the kind of stock screws I find. I managed to find an exact fit, but yeah, I've amassed a few replacement parts. I have also, off eBay, I got like a 3D printed battery pack, so I didn't need to rely on the AC, the whole mains adapter anymore. For my Virtual Boy stand, I got like a replacement aluminium crest here because the old one gets cracked quite easily. It does support quite a bit of weight, and I noticed that people seem to set up the Virtual Boy incorrectly. It's actually meant to be like this, so the emblem is actually on the same side as the actual like headrest, so that way it angles upwards like this, and it's a more comfortable angle than the alternative where you'd have the Virtual Boy essentially downwards like that, and you would have to like scrunch your head in a really weird way. And the thing I find most interesting about the Virtual Boy is the controller. It's a really unique controller. It has 2 D-pads, which is something I've never really seen on another controller. You know, obviously you get controllers nowadays with multiple analog sticks, but this is kind of like a weird precursor to that in a way, which is interesting. It's got the start and select and the A and B, and that's pretty regular. But what you'll notice is that you actually have to turn on the console through the controller. So if you don't have the controller and you have a Virtual Boy, you're kind of screwed. And also, you need a game inserted into the Virtual Boy for it to turn on in the first place. So it has quite a few sort of dependencies on other add-ons, if you like, the Virtual Boy, in order to actually start up in the first place. Something that is to note is that the contacts there that are kind of align with the battery pack or the AC adapter, and the pins for the controller here, the port on the console itself, they actually seem to get dirty pretty quickly, and then the console doesn't want to start up, so you have to bear that in mind. And also, some of these third-party battery packs, they kind of wiggle a bit when you slide them on, so it's easy to lose connection quite quickly. So bear that in mind as well. You might want to try, if you can afford it, go for the like actual official battery pack. But I understand they're pretty rare. I mean, the Virtual Boy itself only sold less than 1 million units worldwide, and that's bearing in mind the fact that it only retailed in 2 countries, in the US and in Japan. So for me, it's pretty interesting that I have one in the UK here. I had to import it, obviously, like I mentioned at the start of the video, but I'm glad I did. And you know what? It's one of those things. It's a really interesting novelty to bring out whenever anyone comes around who's interested in kind of my gaming memorabilia. A lot of people in this country, in the UK, I find, unless you're like quite a keen gaming fanatic or like just a fan, most people haven't really heard of the Virtual Boy. And yeah, something else I forgot to mention about the Virtual Boy controller is when I got this back in 2018, I actually like took the whole thing apart and like gave it a good clean, put WD-40 on it to make it look nice and shiny. And I have to say, I think the plastics retained like that shine really nicely. So this guy, he's seen a few bumps and a few scratches in these past 4 years, but I think he's still looking pretty good. It's a really futuristic design. I really love, like, you know, the 90s and early 2000s. It was such a great era for kind of those rounded, futuristic, sleek designs. I don't really feel like we get stuff like this anymore, which is a real shame. So I think with the Virtual Boy, I'd like to try and find a flash cart. I also want something that was advertised on Planet VB on the forums a while back. I must have seen it quite a few years ago now, but it was basically an adapter to connect the Virtual Boy controller up to a PC. This is probably, I have to be honest with you guys, the Virtual Boy controller is probably the most comfortable controller I've ever held. It might actually be one of the best designed controllers I've ever seen. So at the back it's got these nice ridges, and so when you put your hands on it and you kind of rest them, your fingers just kind of go into those sort of those ridges, and it's very, very comfortable. And then, you know, putting your fingers on the shoulder buttons, or the back triggers, and using the two D-pads and using the other buttons, it feels very kind of, it's very easy. It might look complicated at first glance, because you might think, well, two D-pads, how am I supposed to use this? But in a game like Wario Land, you actually don't need to use the other D-pad. So it's very intuitive. I really, you know, it would be awesome if Nintendo did some sort of like, I don't know, some limited run item, you know, like a Virtual Boy Mini or something like that. That'd be pretty awesome. Or if they did, like, you know, a Virtual Boy controller for the Switch. The biggest missed opportunity, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinions, is that Nintendo never put Virtual Boy games on the 3DS. Because obviously the 3DS has that, like, auto stereoscopic 3D as well, where, you know, your eyes are seeing essentially two different images without the need for any glasses, and then that's combining into like a 3D image. Granted, with the Virtual Boy, it's a lot more forced because you have two different lenses that you're looking through, whereas the 3DS is just a single screen, which I find more impressive, to be honest. It is more impressive. But yeah, it's a real shame, because Wario Land is really such a good platformer. In my opinion, I think it's probably the best Wario Land game. Like, my personal ranking of the 5 Wario Land games would probably be Virtual Boy Wario Land, Wario Land 1, probably Wario Land 4. 3 I was never really a fan of on the Game Boy Color, because it's kind of weird how the mechanics in that game work. And then 2 I never really played that much. I'm a really big fan of the Super Mario Land series, so by extension, they are like a spiritual successor to Super Mario Land, that whole series. So I think they're great games, but it's a real shame that more people don't have like readily available access to Virtual Boy Wario Land, because it's such a good game, really. The other games I'm interested in for the Virtual Boy are Tolero Boxer, because I think that makes pretty good use of the two different D-pads, and then Vertical Force, because I'm a pretty big shoot-'em-up fan, like I mentioned in my Switch retrospective video. So that's something I'm really keen on picking up. And the last time I checked the prices for Vertical Force, I don't think it was too expensive, so maybe it's something I'll pick up soon. Overall, the Virtual Boy, I think it's a really... I want to say it was ahead of its time, and also it wasn't marketed properly. A lot of the marketing I see for this thing kind of describes it as a handheld console. It's very much a tabletop console, right? You need the stand to play it. I think if you get the opportunity to kind of sit in a room, you know, close the blinds, turn off the lights, whatever, just sit and play a game like Wario Land, which is a genuinely well-made game that really really fully exploits the capabilities of the Virtual Boy as a 32-bit system, and also it exploits its gimmick of 3D very well, very effectively. If you get an opportunity to experience one of these, you'll surely be blown away. I think it's a really impressive little device. And it's a shame that it wasn't supported more. I think Nintendo pushed it out in between the Super Nintendo and the N64, and they just kind of left it for dead. In a way, the PS Vita, which I'll say is probably, it's a device with wider appeal, right? But that also faced a similar situation where it was pushed out by its company, in the Vita's case Sony, and then after a while they just stopped supporting it. What makes this even sadder, in my opinion, is that they had plans to put out a lot more stuff on it. Like, there was going to be an F-Zero game, which would have been awesome, you know, but we never got it. So hopefully, you know, we'll get some homebrew in the future where someone will make like a F-Zero type game. Until then, I guess we just got to appreciate what we've got. It's got a very small game library. There are some difficult to get ones like Jack Bros, which is a pretty interesting game, Shin Megami Tensei spin-off. It's not a role-playing game at all, which is pretty unique. But yeah, the Virtual Boy. I just wanted to talk about it today. For some reason, I have no idea why, but I was looking at it yesterday when I was playing. I was like, you know what? This would be a nice thing to just kind of sit and talk about. I feel like I've rambled a little bit, but let me know if you want to see me talk about other stuff in my collection that I find interesting. I'd be happy to make videos like that, and thanks for watching. Wait, where's the...